The Tar Heels bounced back from that embarrassing James Madison loss by grabbing a 20-0 second half lead at Duke, which they promptly squandered.
You are Locked On Tar Heels, your daily podcast on the UNC Tar Heels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, what's up? It's Saturday, September 28th, 2024. Welcome into this live postcast edition of the Locked On Tar Heels podcast, the only daily North Carolina show out there. I'm your host, Isaac Shade, and you're joining me at the place to get your Carolina content every single day. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Special shout out. So glad to have all you everydayers with us, the Locked On Tar Heels Discord members, and of course, our great Locked On Tar Heels insiders. Welcome in, everyone. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. You guys, you know what time it is. Therapy session with your old pal, Isaac. That's what we do after a Carolina loss. And oh, boy, does this one hurt. It hurts bad. Bad. Carolina takes a 17-0 lead to the locker room. They catch a very lucky break early in the second half and turn it into 3 more points. It's 20-0 on the road midway through the third quarter, and they cannot hold it. Duke reels off 21 straight points to close the game. Carolina's last-ditch effort goes begging, and consequently, the victory bell is now no longer in Chapel Hill. This is yet another game in this Carolina-Duke rivalry that is played within 3 points. Each of the last 6 games, 4 of them have been won within 3 points. Unfortunately, this is the only one won by the Blue Devils. Carolina had won 5 straight. Mac Brown had personally won 13 straight against Duke. And that is now out the window. Manny Diaz comes back, gets a measure of revenge against his old boss. And here we are, now sitting at 3-2 overall and 0-1 instead of what appeared like it was going to be 1-0 in ACC play. And I got to tell you, this is a frustrating end to this game. There were some very encouraging things early, and boy, did it flip on its head in the second half. And that's what we all got to talk about. So let's do what we always do on these shows. We're going to unpack several things from the game, the good, the bad, and the ugly. We'll have a couple of ad reads. And then at the end of things, I want to get to your comments, your questions, your observations. I'm sure there's going to be some fire Mac Brown. I'm sure there's going to be some outcoached, all sorts of stuff. And so we'll get to all of that. But just, we're going to get all the regular comments after loss. That is what it is. Let's start with just the last drive of the game. Carolina starts this last drive and frankly did well to get the ball back. I thought if I was Duke, by the way, I would have gone for it on that 4th and 1. I was surprised that they went out, put the offense on the field, just tried to draw Carolina offsides, called a timeout, and punted. And, I would have gone for it. The analytics probably say you go for it. But let's be honest. If you're Manny Diaz, you feel very comfortable about how your defense has been performing because Carolina ain't done nothing in a minute. But they do punt. Carolina gets the ball back. They've got 1 minute, 37 seconds left. No timeouts. Ball's on their own 5. You need a field goal. And I wonder what's going to happen. And this is a great moment to see, hey, what is Jacoby Criswell made of? What is this team made of? And there were a couple, it was slow starting. There are a couple to Nesbitt. Criswell picked up a couple on his own on the ground. And then came the big chunk play to Gavin Blackwell out to the 40-yard line. And that's it. It's there's that chunk play you need on a, 2-minute drive to really get into position and win a ball game. The problem was from there, Carolina still needed 35 yards to be on the outside of Noah Burnett's kicking range and probably, 30, 35, 40 more yards to feel really good about it. Duke brings some pressure. Carolina can't pick it up on second down. Criswell was either hit as he threw or was tipped. I think it was tipped because it came out lame duck and picked off, and there's your ball game, kneel down, and it's over. So that was that final drive. Carolina, it was a chance to just squeak out of there with a victory that, quite frankly, by that point didn't deserve to get, but they just could not get it. Before we talk about all the frustration let's just live in the happiness of the first half for a minute, because there were so many encouraging signs, right? We were looking to see, how does Carolina bounce back? How does the defense respond to what happened last week? Are there more coverage busts? Is communication better? How does Jacoby Criswell have an encore? What is his encore performance? All of this. And quite frankly, Carolina in the first 30 minutes of this game bounced back very well. Thank you very much. First off, you're looking for a fast start. You didn't get it offensively, but you did defensively. Duke gets the ball first. Carolina gets a 3-and-out. Then they go 3-and-out. But then you get another 3-and-out on Duke. Carolina goes down, kicks a field goal, another 3-and-out on Duke, and Carolina goes down and gets a touchdown. So you're 6 possessions into this thing, 3 for each team, and you're like, 3 3-and-outs, 2 scores for Carolina, 10-0. That a football game does not win, but you got to feel good about where you're at that point, right? Absolutely you do, especially if you can continue to build on it, which Carolina did. Duke's next drive, they get a first down, but then Carolina 3-and-out after. So it was like a 4-and-out drive. Duke gets a solid drive after that, nothing doing. And then Carolina gets another 3-and-out. So it's like, man, things are looking good. And by the time we got to halftime, last week against James Madison, 53 first half points surrendered. Today, on the road at Duke, 0 points surrendered. And you're like, yeah, feeling good at that point, right? Because last week, you're at home, Sun Belt Conference opponent, and you squander 53. But then you go on the road at an ACC opponent who, oh, by the way, is Duke, and you hold them to nothing. And you're feeling good because not only is it all of that, but it's Duke. And Coach K is there, and it's like, yeah, when he shows up, we win. That's what happened in the last couple games of his career. And I'm thinking at halftime, I thought that first half, 53 points surrendered last week, 0 this week. I was like, oh, man, there's my shady stat of the game. I'm ready. That's going to be great. Keep pouring it on in the second half. No, it was not meant to be. And that leads us into talking about adjustments. Because I thought the game plan coming in, Carolina had the edge. Malik Murphy was off for Duke in the first half. Carolina did a good job bottling up Star Thomas, Duke's running back. Elijah Huzzy was doing a real nice job on Moore, the receiver. And Carolina, for their part, I thought had a good offensive attack. We'll talk about that in a minute. But the problem is, you all know this, a football game is 60 minutes. And a lot of times, the team that makes the best adjustments or adjustments to the adjustments is the team that comes out and win. And unfortunately, in this game, Duke was that team that made the better adjustments. They adjust after halftime. They start bringing blitzes from different places, start bogging down Carolina's deep offense, and that forces Carolina's defense to be more gassed, and then Duke's able to get out and go. And what I thought Carolina was not able to do was counter what Duke did, because it's not just about the halftime adjustment. It's, all right, let's see what adjustments they made, and then we're going to adjust to that. That is the truly high-level coaching that it takes. And I thought that Carolina was outfoxed by the Duke coaching staff in the second half and was never able to do that. So the offense stalls, defense is on the field a ton, they're gassed, and so consequently, what are we used to seeing? Late in a game, what happens? Omarion Hampton has just been punishing dudes all game long, and then by the fourth quarter, they want nothing to do with it, and he's just racking up chunk yardage. Unfortunately, the way things were going, Carolina could not or was incapable of figuring that out. Meanwhile, it's Star Thomas that's the one playing the Omarion Hampton role, and he's the one just gashing the Tar Heels late in the game. That is what this turned into. It's a tale of two halves, and unfortunately, the most important tale was the second half and Carolina's inability to adjust. Now, I do want to talk about what we had said was the key matchup: Duke's defense against Carolina's offensive line. I want to talk about why I thought it was going well in the first half. But then I want to look at the drive charts and see the comparisons between the two halves, because, man, things got a little bit wacky there in the second half. So that's what we're going to do coming up in just a second. Right after I tell you about Robinhood. Robinhood Gold allows others to get the rates and perks that are usually only reserved for high society. But now the resourceful individual with Robinhood Gold can earn the very liberal rate of 4.5% APY on uninvested cash, receive unlimited 1% deposit bonuses, and be rewarded with a handsome 3% retirement boost on an IRA account. Robinhood Gold provides the privileges of a high net worth for any net worth. These generous benefits are now available for just $5 a month. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. So sign up right now at robinhood.com/gold. Terms apply. For product-specific disclosures, visit robinhood.com/gold. Remember that investing involves risk. The rate may change, and gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold, LLC. All right, gang, let's get right back into it. Welcome into this therapy session that we're having. If you're just joining us, where we are breaking down this game between Carolina and Duke. Unfortunately, the Tar Heels go on the road and just cannot get it done at Wallace Wade Stadium. For those watching, I am bringing up the box score now so you can see it. For those that are listening to this, you can check on my Twitter feed and find the box score, or just look it up on ESPN or something like that. So here's the key matchup in this game. We had talked about it multiple times in this week leading up. Duke's defense, which, again, as a reminder, led the nation coming in tackles for loss and was second in the nation in total sacks heading into the weekend. And so how would Carolina's offense, and particularly the offensive line, hold up? I thought, for the most part, Carolina did a pretty decent job. Duke finishes with 6 tackles for loss and 2 sacks. Carolina actually had the upper hand in that. Same tackles for loss, 6, and Carolina had 3 sacks. The telling number, though, to me, is where Duke really, really bothered Carolina, is that Carolina had 2 quarterback hurries. Duke had 10. I thought there were multiple times where Duke was able to put Jacoby Criswell under duress and make him make a quicker decision than he wanted to or needed to, and that was where it was kind of really won out. Part of the good news for Carolina's offensive line is that they were back to their starting 5, if you'll allow me that. And so that's an encouraging sign. You had Aiden Banfield out there. Blasky was back last week, but he's out there as well. And so you like to see that, but still just wasn't quite enough. But what I love that Chip Lindsey was doing early is that he was finding ways to counter Duke's defensive aggression, whether it was bootlegs for Jacoby Criswell, getting him out of the pocket, sometimes designed, sometimes of Criswell's own recognition of the pocket is collapsing real bad around me. Let me flip around and get out to where I can make a play. And he did. Another thing that they were finding was some good fakes in what seemed like obvious handoff to Omarion Hampton moments. So here's a couple examples of that. Carolina's 3rd drive, where they got their first touchdown of the game, was a great example of the complementary football that's available to Carolina now that Jacoby Criswell is the quarterback and they've got his arm to go alongside Omarion Hampton's legs. For example, there was just north of 6 minutes left in the first quarter. Duke gets into the backfield, should be an obvious tackle for loss. The difference to what Duke had been facing all season long to this point is there's, prohibitively the best running back in the nation in the backfield for Carolina, who, even if he's dead to rights, is not dead to rights because there's Omarion Hampton and he's going to get out and go. So he avoided a tackle for loss there because you know what? Sometimes the best player on the field wins, and Omarion Hampton is going to be the best player on just about every field this year. That is Carolina's trump card when they can take advantage of it. Duke's been great getting those tackle for losses, but they haven't experienced what he does. In a way that I thought Chip Lindsey, an example of him using Duke's aggressiveness against them. There was the play that the first TD came on. It was that 4th and 1. Carolina goes for it, like being aggressive there. They're at the Duke 24. Clearly, it's going to be a handoff to Omarion Hampton, right? No. Fake right up the middle. J.J. Jones is wide open, 3, 4, 5 yards behind every defender. Touchdown. Easy pitch and catch. And it's great. But then, as we said earlier, all that was gone. Because let me just tell you what the drive charts were in this game. And that's pretty indicative of how things really flipped and changed in the second half. Duke's first half drive charts resulted in punt, 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 punt. 6 punts, then a missed field goal, and then the end of the half. That was Duke's first half. But the problem is, this is what their second half then turned into. Touchdown, touchdown, turnover on downs, touchdown, punt. That was like when Carolina forced the punt right before the end of the game, and kneel down. So you go from 6 punts, a missed field goal, and end of half to 3 touchdowns, a turnover on downs, a punt, and a kneel down. Carolina, on the other hand, was the exact opposite, only their first half wasn't as potent as Duke's second half was. Here's Carolina's first half: punt, field goal, touchdown, punt, bunt, touchdown, punt. Second half, punt, field goal. Is, 2 different possessions, but kind of the same possession. That was when Carolina got that lucky break on the blocked punt, which felt like it had been coming all game, by the way. Duke was coming very close, and that's terrifying coming off of a game where Carolina had also gotten a punt blocked last week. That's got to be fixed this week. Had a couple other special teams wins. That was a special teams loss. Anyway, Carolina gets that field goal that really was gifted to them. It was a nice drive after getting the ball back, but still. So punt, field goal, punt, interception. That's the end of the game. And so sure, you can put some blame on the defense, some missed tackles and things like that. But you've got to recognize how Carolina's inability to move the ball offensively was a thorn in the side of the defense, because they're out there just gashed and gassed because they're having to be out there so much. That said, I did think the defense was much improved over last week. Regardless of the results, I thought communication was much better, unless I'm just forgetting. I cannot remember any coverage busts. Yes, as has been the case quite a bit this season, there were multiple times when D-backs didn't get their bodies turned around and it resulted in DPI or something, which, the penalties were back up. I think it was back up to 10. So, man, back into double digits again. It was a bang call on. Carolina had made several stops down by the goal line there. And then there was the DPI on Caleb Costa, I thought it was. And honestly, that's a play that's so bang that usually I feel like the refs swallow their yellow flags. And I just got flagged on it. And then Duke puts it in on the next play. I can't remember which touchdown that was of Duke's. I'm trying to look into the third quarter here. Let's see, Duke's first touchdown. Nope, it wasn't. I think it was Duke's second touchdown. Yep, it was. There was the DPI on cost. So, man, it was just tough. So Carolina's defense, while much improved, there were a couple of those where they didn't get their heads turned around. Fine, cool, whatever. And there was some poor tackling, but the defense, I'm looking to see some. Carolina got the ball back after that blocked punt, but other than that, 0 turnovers forced in this game. You're not, especially on the road, man, you just got to be able to come up with stuff like that, and Carolina was not able to. The question I've been wondering is, what is the real Carolina defense? And man, what's funny is we had seen it be 2 completely different things in like the first 3 games. And then last week on Saturday, we saw it, I think, between the 2 halves. We saw the great version of it in the first half, just 37 rush yards allowed, 60 pass yards allowed, 97 total yards for Duke in the first half. I'm feeling great about that. But they finished with 394, 185 on the ground, 209 through the air. Again, the offense has some blame for that, but that's just an explanation. It's not necessarily an excuse for the defense. That said, man, they had a big time hold midway through the fourth quarter, where Duke was driving. Elijah Huzzy has a pass breakup on first down, and I think third, or was it that? Because that was when they went for it on fourth down. No, the Huzzy was first and third. The second was the Duke drop, and then fourth down was the Marcus Allen PBU. And I know there was some conversation about any of those 3 that were PBUs maybe could have been flagged, but like the one with Marcus Allen, I thought was more offensive pass interference than defensive pass interference. Huzzy was riding his guys a couple times, but nothing I thought warranting a flag, and was able to get his hand in and knock it away. I mean, big time plays. And on the one to Allen, Power Eccles had come unblocked up the middle to force Murphy to make his throw a little bit early. But here's the problem. Carolina forces that punt and you're feeling really, really good. But you know what happens? Literally on first down as Carolina gets the ball back. That was the play where there was a hold and the unsportsmanlike on J.J. Jones, which on the broadcast, they never actually showed it. So I never saw what it was. But at that point, you're looking at 1st and 35. You're not going to pick that up. Because even if there had been the hold, but not the unsportsmanlike, you're feeling, all right, 1st and 20, we can maybe do something with that and make some moves. Because at that point, if I'm remembering correctly, I'm looking back at my drive charts right now. Carolina was still up at that point, right? No. At that point, it was 21-20 Duke. No, I'm wrong. That was right before Duke's third touchdown to go up 21-20. So Carolina has forced Duke to punt and still has the lead. And it's like, man, you just need to start picking up first downs. And that's it. You can run this game out. But they just, frankly, were not able to do it. And that's what's so disheartening about that. A couple great things, like Power Eccles, just talked about him. He had multiple pass breakups on third down plays to force punts. One of them, I thought the tight end was going to have the ball. He strips it out, had another one, and then coverage out what could have been a touchdown, but just forced I think it was the tight end again, out of bounds, used the boundary as another defender, and did a great job there. Love seeing him do what he does. And interesting on the switch from him away from being the guy making the calls with the green dot. So there's that. A couple other things. We'll take another break and then get to your questions. One of the things that I thought was really disappointing is that Carolina had the ball at the end of the first half and was going to get it back for the second half because they had deferred, and they just weren't really able to capitalize. The end of the first half, you get it back from Duke, 3 and out. Duke gets the ball back. There's like 8 seconds, and we just go to their locker room. And so it's like, man, shoot, love to capitalize on that. Still, we're up 17-0. Beginning of the second half, Carolina gets a first down, but then nothing more. That's when the blocked punt happens. And sure, you get 3 out of it, but really you shouldn't have. So you bridge halftime with a 3 and out and like a 4 and out, basically. You got to take advantage of those moments, and Carolina couldn't. Omarion Hampton did mostly Omarion Hampton things. It's just, eventually Duke started pinning their ears back and coming, and he wasn't able to get as much going in the second half, but finishes over 100 yards yet again, 29 rushes for 103, and was a bigger factor in the passing game. I think he was the second leading receiver behind J.J. Jones, 4 receptions for 50 yards. As for Jacoby Criswell, this was another of our big questions, and I guess we haven't really gotten to it yet, is what would his encore be to his, the 475 yards at against James Madison, excuse me. I thought he did mostly well. There were a couple throws that I thought were forced into maybe too tight of windows, kind of living lucky again with a couple maybe should have been INTs. I know there was the interception at the end of the game, but I mean, he was like hit as he threw, and you can't really blame that on him. Also, it's a 2-minute drive. You're running out of time. You're trying to make things happen. Sometimes that happens. For the game, finishes 21 of 39. That's 54%. Not wildly efficient. And that's something, you see. There were some good throws from Criswell. Sometimes you just don't see that touch you want to. Finishes with 251 through the air, 2 touchdowns through the air as well. One to J.J. Jones, one to Bryson Nesbitt. And then he had to pick up some on the ground as well, 7 for 26 on the ground. I thought made pretty good choices of when to run with it and when to not. For example, there was another play. Forgive me, I forget the context of specifically when it was, but where either, a lesser polished quarterback or someone who wasn't maybe comfortable enough yet might have taken off. Rather than that, Criswell simply stepped up in the pocket and then delivered a strike for first down. That's what I want to see on plays like that. Don't bail while you still have an option to pick up a big chunk through the air. And that's what he did there. I like things like that. Okay, I want to get to your questions and comments. We're going to get to do that coming up here in just a second. Right after I tell you about our good friends at FanDuel. Hey, man, here's the deal. It's a great time if you're an NFL fan to be able to get a lot of stuff back from FanDuel right now, where you can go in and find everything they've got for you. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game like, oh man, Duke's looking like they're going to make a comeback, maybe I should flip this, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. So, get ahead and look at next week's Carolina game. Maybe you want to get something on the NFL games this weekend. I don't know, maybe Georgia and Alabama are going on as we record. Maybe there's something you could do in real time for that. So go check it out, all of that at FanDuel.com. It's America's #1 sportsbook. Okay, guys, we're going to leave the box score up here, but as we do so, I want to get to a few of your questions and comments and see what's happening here. Jeffrey Polly says, our O-line quit in the second half, as did our D-line. And I get what Jeffrey's saying here. A lot of this is Duke pinning back their ears and Carolina not having an answer for that. But yes, one of the things Denoris Searcy had talked about on yesterday's show was that Carolina had to go about reestablishing the line of scrimmage and doing a good job. They held that in the first half. As Jeffrey says here, in the second half, they did not. As I predicted, a lot of Mac Brown stuff. Tony Dowd says, I thought we were supposed to have this amazing tight end room. Was May that good, or was our tight end room overrated, putting too much on Hampton's shoulders? Let's handle the tight end side of that. Yeah, Tony, we do have a great tight end room. They've been the thing that has been stable for Carolina so far this season, as the wide receivers, quite frankly, have struggled to get going. In this game, Bryson Nesbitt finishes with 5 for 33 and a touchdown on 12 targets. And a lot of that was, I can't remember if any of those were drops. Obviously, that's, under 50% completion percentage to Nesbitt. But a lot of those were frankly on Criswell, if we're being honest. Copenhagen only had 1 today for 15 yards and 5 targets. So again, as we said, very inefficient to both of those guys today. But Tony, truthfully, I believe the tight ends have been the best part of the receiving core to this point in the season. A lot of it is the as you ask here, was Drake May that good? Yeah. But also, again, the tight ends are that good. But ultimately, the combination of Criswell and the receivers, both the wide receivers and the tight ends, have to be able to take that off of Omarion's shoulders. The problem is, unfortunately, that's all going to come back to the O-line holding up, and there's got to be good protection schemes. And with Duke in the second half, and I thought this is part of it too, Tony, is Duke started mixing up where their blitzes were coming from better in the second half, or overloading with too many rushers that Carolina couldn't account for. And that's a factor in this too, of Carolina not being able to get the ball out. A lot of things, it's interesting. A lot of people suggesting who should be brought in. Yes, there were some wild Cliff Kingsbury internet rumors this weekend. That's not happening. Anyway, I just don't even want to mess with that right now. Tony says again, how do other teams manage to put together these first-year teams and coaches manhandled a supposedly established, talented football team like UNC? 2 words, Tony: transfer portal. There you go. And so I love this. Amar Williams asks, what's Mac Brown's record compared to Fedora with this many games coached? Amar, I'm assuming you mean like in Mac Brown 2.0, like Mac Brown's record to this point versus Larry Fedora's. I don't have that off the top of my head. It's kind of the inverse. The Fedora era started off well and just really dropped off a cliff. And so, man, that's tough. That's a great question. Here's a good one from, and I don't have those numbers in front of me. I can look them up later, Amar, and get back to you, talk about it later this week, but it's an interesting question. Okay. Miscellaneous. This is actually coming from our friend Marion. What's up, Marion? Good to see you. She says, what do you think our chances are going forward to win 6 games? Well, that, ma'am, is a great question. Let's pull up the Carolina football schedule in real time here and look at it, because I mean, goodness gracious. I think in a lot of ways, you're looking at this thing midway through the third quarter and you're like, okay, last week is behind us. Carolina's going to wrap up this win, be 1-0 in ACC play. And then it's like, oh yeah, that was just, a quarter and a half of just the wheels falling apart last week. But now you're not feeling that. Carolina's 3-2, needs 3 wins to get back to bowl eligibility. So next week, you got Pittsburgh at home at noon. Pittsburgh's been looking good. Then you get Georgia Tech at home a week later. We know the struggles with Georgia Tech. We know that Georgia Tech's been better this year as well. Those might be toss-up games, especially with how Carolina has looked last week and then the second half of this week. Then you got to go to Virginia, then to Florida State. You host Wake. You should easily win that game. And then you got to go to BC, who has looked really good, although they barely eked out a win today. I think had to have a massive fourth quarter comeback to win against like Western Kentucky. But you got to go up there November 23rd. That's going to be miserable. And then you host NC State. So basically you're trying to say, can we find 3 wins in there somewhere? I think the most obvious win is Wake Forest. Let's say you at least split with Pitt and Georgia Tech the next 2 weeks. Feel good about doing that. And then that leaves you like, you got to win at Virginia, at Florida State, at Boston College, or against NC State. Obviously, Florida State has not looked great, but you got to imagine they are coming along. At Virginia, Carolina obviously owes them some payback, but it's on the road, and we'll see what happens. And how ironic is it that Georgia Tech and Virginia are back-to-back after what we saw with that last year? And then, boy, you would love to knock off NC State to end the regular season, especially if you're sitting 5-6 going into that game to beat NC State to get to bowl eligibility. And I know that doesn't like, oh yes, this season was incredible at that point, but you're feeling infinitely better about yourself if you do. All of that said, here's what's weird. Because of not having Miami or Clemson, whatever on the schedule, or Notre Dame, you look at this thing, and if we're being honest, even with what we've seen the past 2 weeks, none of those games do you look at them and saying there's no way Carolina can win that game. Every one of them is possible for Carolina to win. So this season is not over and dead and gone, but there's things to get figured out. How do we play a full 60 minutes of football? How do we not let what happened in the second half tonight happen again? How do we not let what happened for that quarter and a half last week to happen again? How do we put together a complete game, finish this off, and get some victories? Which, I mean, let's be honest, even as bad as we feel right now, Carolina tonight was maybe, 2 or 3 more completions and a Burnett field goal away from pulling out a game they, essentially had choked away and almost came back and won it. So, it's just in this wide open ACC, there's all sorts of possibilities, right? I mean, y'all got to understand that, right? But I also understand, even in that same breath, Carolina could just as easily go out and lose a ton of these. And that's where we're at. These all feel like toss-ups where week to week, anything could happen. So, man, that's what we're going to have to see going forward. Got to put a team away and be able to finish it off. And that's what Carolina could not do in this game. And that's why they're now sitting at 3-2 overall, and why they are sitting at 0-1 in the ACC. So going to have to get back to the drawing board, going to have to figure all this out. And that's what we'll talk about this week, heading up to this next game against Pittsburgh at home next weekend. Again, that's noon on ESPN or ESPN2. All right, guys, thanks so much for tuning in for this therapy session. Oh, boy. Carolina was up 20-0 on Duke in the second half and lost. That's just hitting the reality of it again. That's painful. Got to go back and get some payback during basketball season, which, by the way, is coming so close, 5 weeks from Monday. If you're not already subscribed to the show on audio and video, make sure you do that so that you don't miss a second. By the way, if you enjoy these post-game live postcast reactions, make sure that you've hit the bell notification on YouTube so that you get notified as soon as I go live, and you can just tap right in with us. Also, if you're not part of the Locked On Tar Heels Insider Program, man, we'd love to have you be part of that. You can text me directly one-on-one. I'm love engaging with everybody at that level. But also, as part of that, I make available to you all my record book, my charts, my stats, my data, all of that stuff. And so, man, a great way to be even more deeply involved in Locked On Tar Heels. It's a 2-week free trial to check it out and see if you like it. And then after that, it's just $5 a month. Great way to help support the show. Also, if you're not part of the Locked On Tar Heels Discord, which just continues to grow like gangbusters, we'd love to see you in there as well. The link's in the show notes, and it's absolutely free to join. Oh, gang, it's always a great day to be a Tar Heel, even on a day like today where it's a bummer, the outcome of the game. But guess what? There are bigger things in our world. Speaking of which, thoughts and prayers to all of those that have been affected by these storms and the flooding and stuff. Man, it is crazy. My parents live in Johnson City, Tennessee, like where Coach Rob is, and where the bridge is out on I-26, or the road has fallen apart. It's just like a little couple miles from their house. So I've driven that road. It's crazy. It's bonkers. So I am in prayer for all of you as you continue to work through that. All right, guys, again, forgive me. It's always a great day to be a Tar Heel. We'll talk again on Monday, but until then, peace.